Welcome to episode 41 of I Thought I Knew How, a podcast about knitting and life and all sorts. I'm your host, Anne Frost, and this episode was recorded on August 21st, 2020. Today I have some odds and ends to share with you, and then I have an interview to play from Jana Knits of the Purl Together podcast over on YouTube. I'll throw in a song before then, too. Here we go. Well, folks, I don't know what to say. There was a huge rush on the Patreon this week. Thank you so much to Jessica, Rhiannon, Jean, Keturah, Angie, Jenny, Chris, Gail, and Caroline for becoming patrons since the last episode. Patrons help with the running of the podcast and receive some benefits in return. One of those benefits is a group benefit at 25 patrons. I said that once we hit 25, I would make a short video walking you through the podcast process so you can get a bit of a behind-the-scenes look. I totally forgot about that group benefit. I forgot about group benefits completely. I apologize. I am still learning, but I will look into getting that done as soon as I can. I only have one more episode left until we skip town, and there's a lot happening ahead of skipping town, so I may need to wait until I get back before we do that. I'll tell you more about our skipping town in a moment. The next group goal is at 50 patrons, and we only need 7 more. At that point, I'm going to host a 90-minute monthly knit together online for patrons at all giving levels. So once we get to that point, the ribbing patrons will receive invites to one of the online knit togethers every month. The website for that is patreon.com/IThoughtIKnewHow. And thank you to Keeper1154, Shrikeforce2, and Alpaca Envy for their very kind comments left on iTunes while rating the show. This was a very warm, fuzzy-filled couple of weeks, everyone. iTunes reviews and comments help raise the show in the rankings when people search for knitting podcasts, so it's an easy way to help spread the word. I have a handful of little things to share with you and a big thing, and then we will have an ad and a song and get into the interview for this week. First, my daughter Abby won the first runner-up prize for the Great Northern Yarn Haul. They hadn't posted what the prizes were, but it arrived yesterday, and she won 2 $25 gift certificates, one to Scratch and one to the Elegant Ewe. Scratch has an online store, but the Elegant Ewe does not. We're going to have to see if we can call and have them mail her an order. I bet they'd do that. Anyway, she was very excited. I was very excited for her. We'll soon be welcoming some new yarn into the household, and it doesn't have to be stored in my office, so that is great news all around. It has been a very busy few weeks. I got a little bit more done with carding the Shetland fleece, but not much, to be honest. And I got far enough along on the yoke for the machine knit sweater that I am a few rounds into the motif, so I know enough now to know that I have the math right as far as how far around the design needed to go. I was extra busy the last few weeks because I was hosting the Lark Alvina knit along over on the Morehouse Farm group. It was a lot of fun to meet more people and cheer them on. I got a second Lark Alvina knit, so now each of my daughters will be getting one for their birthdays in October. Many thanks to Erin for inviting me to come play with her group members. As I record this, yesterday was the last day of the knit along, and it was so neat to see people's finished objects start showing up in the group. I posted the daily goals in my group too, but if anyone is late to the party, visit the Morehouse Merino flock group, and you will find all the prompts and helps under the Units tab, along with all of Erin's other knit alongs. I will tell you about the next knit along for listeners at the end of the podcast, so be sure to listen all the way to the end. Folks have been intrigued by my 100-day dress challenge with the wool and Rowena swing dress, as well they should be. August 25th will be day 50, halfway through the challenge, and unless something happens in the next few days, I will still be going strong. I wash the dress every 5 days or so, otherwise I can just hang it overnight in my closet and it's fresh by the morning and ready to go again. It is so comfortable that I feel like I'm living in pajamas. I know a couple of you have been in touch to say you've taken the plunge yourself. You don't have to wear it for 100 days in a row to appreciate the comfort and convenience of dressing in a woolen dress, but you might want to. Give it a go yourself. Check the show notes for my link to the Wool and website, and if you decide to buy, you'll be helping to run the show at no additional cost to yourself. As always, thank you for supporting the show. Did I throw you off by having the ad read so early in the show? I'm only going to be playing one song today because of the interview with Jana coming up, so I went ahead with the ad first because I do have more to share. Some of you already know, but we have decided to go ahead with our plans to visit the UK in September. My husband already works online. Almost all of my commitments are now online due to COVID. So even though we will be required to quarantine for 2 weeks when we arrive, we figured we'd go ahead and do it because we can just work there instead of working here and still have our vacation. We'll head up to Shetland immediately after our quarantine ends, where we will mainly focus on outdoor activities. There are a few of the museums up there that are open, but not many, so we'll need to be outside anyway. I'm still hoping to arrange for a few interviews, but I haven't reached out to anyone yet. Things have just been too manic. After our time in Shetland, we've been invited by a few friends and some crofters on the Hebrides to come by and visit, so that is where we will head next. If all goes well, we'll spend a few days in London before heading home. Because I will be traveling, the times that we do our online knitting group, both for patrons and listeners in general, will be shifted about a little bit. Patrons are going to miss out on one online knit time because I have to be on a plane and there's no other Tuesday that I can reschedule it to. So I've decided that to make it up to them, I'm going to try to post a daily video of our travels to the Patreon feed the entire time we're gone. That will be available to patrons at all levels, so if you'd like to get a daily update on the trip, hop over to patreon.com/IthoughtIknewHow and make a pledge at the $1 level, and that's all it will take to get you access. These will be iPhone videos, unedited, so don't get too excited. But I know that it really is a gift to be able to travel this year, and I'm happy to share the experience. The online knitting will be thrown off a lot, actually, between now and the end of the year. There's a conflict with Election Day, my traveling, a few other things. So please be sure to check the Facebook group for updates for that. I'll try to get a list of dates together and put them up. That doesn't mean there won't also be unexpected changes, but this will give us a good starting point. One of the other reasons I've been so busy this last week has been putting together the online International Fiber Festival that's coming up in November. But I've also been helping Erin at Morehouse with a festival she was involved with this week. I have been absolutely fascinated to see how the various festivals have shifted online and the different ways that organizers have dealt with these challenges. With my interest in travel and experience living overseas in a time zone very different from many of my friends and family living in the US, the OIFF is designed so it is strongly slanted towards cultural interests and regional fiber art traditions and is available to anyone, anywhere to do on their own timetable. Other festivals emphasize personal contact with specific teachers, so they offer live classes at specific times, and potential students need to work around those times. And some people have found ways to transfer their retreat experiences online. One of those people is Jana of the Purl Together podcast. Jana's podcast and a whole host of instructional videos can be found on YouTube by searching for Purl Together. In the past, she has hosted a retreat in person for her listeners and has had to move it online, and I thought her modifications were interesting, so I decided to ask her on to chat about how she's making it work. As you will hear, for now, she will be just holding one session of the retreat, but if there's enough interest, she's open to running subsequent sessions, so be sure to reach out to her if you think it sounds like a fun way to spend a weekend. I will be back with a few things at the end of the interview, but for now we're going to go into a song, and after that we'll go right into my talk with Jana. All right, this is Anne from the future. I was just sitting here editing the podcast and realized that I hadn't actually introduced the song. This is why I tend to script the podcast, because otherwise I forget things like mentioning the name and the artist of the song. So here you go. This song is The World is in a Tangle by Jontavius Willis. I think you're going to enjoy this. I may have found a new favorite artist on my streaming service. You might hear more from Jontavius next week. I hope you like it. The World is in a Tangle.
I'm gonna move away and change my name. I said the world's in a tangle. What's going on? I'm going to a foreign land, make it my home. You can be having a good day, as jolly as you can be. I bet you'll get the blues when you turn on the TV, 'cause the world's in a tangle. Oh, what's going on? I'm going to a foreign land and make it my home. Let me hear that mandolin a while. Promise us peace while we're living, but we have to get it when we die. The world's in a tangle. Oh, what's going on? I'm gonna go to a foreign land, make it my home. Mr. Banjo Man.
Jana, thanks for taking the time to talk to me today.
Thanks for having me. I've never been on this side. Well, no, it's rare that I'm on this side of the question and answer routine.
Yeah, I was wondering if this was like your first interview.
No, but it's rare.
Let's start at the beginning, if we will, and talk about how you got into knitting in the first place.
Well, I've been asked this question several times about, when did you learn to knit? Were you a child? All that. I honestly don't remember. I don't remember learning to knit. Like you probably, and a lot of your listeners may or may not remember learning how to read. Mm-hmm. Like, do you remember actually sounding out the words and learning how to read?
I do, because here, let's digress. I remember being in first grade and the teacher taking the kids back at the beginning of the year, like to the back of the room, and having a word list. And some of the kids could read it. And I was irate that I had not been taught to read and other kids had. So I do remember learning how to read.
I do not. I mean, I don't remember that. And I don't remember learning how to knit. I am fairly certain that my grandmother, in combination with my mother, taught me at some point when I was a child. but I don't remember, this is the knit stitch, this is the purl stitch, poke it through, wrap the neat yarn and pull it. I mean, I don't remember. I don't remember any of that.
Do you remember some of your first projects?
No, not until I was an adult. There's a lot of stuff I don't remember. And we moved around a ton. I lived in I went to 11 different public schools.
Wow.
And I lived in 9 different states, 4 of them twice before I was 18. So there's a lot of blanks there. There's just like PTSD from moving all the time and always being the new kid. It was horrible. Right. Anyway, it was awful. So I don't really recall that. I mean, but what I do remember is getting back into knitting as a 20, 21, 22-year-old. Mm-hmm. And I knew how to make the stitches. I knew how to knit and purl, but then I started getting more into let's learn how to make a sock and let's do an Icelandic yoke sweater, like a Lopi sweater. And I remember doing those things in my early 20s. I'm in my 50s now for your listeners, so it's been a while. But I don't remember any the obligatory garter stitch scarf or the washcloths. I don't remember doing any of that stuff. Mm-hmm. I don't. I just knit a sweater. One of the first projects I made after I got married when I was 20, and one of the very first projects I made after we got married was I made my husband one of those Icelandic yoke sweaters, but my mother was helping me, hold the 2 colors in both hands, and here's how we're going to do this. And she just kind of walked me through it,
Mm-hmm. Your mother is also a knitter and a spinner. Oh, yes. You are a spinner too. When did you get into spinning?
I wouldn't say I'm into spinning. I know how. I'm not terribly accomplished at it. I didn't really graduate past the drop spindle because I like the drop spindle. Mm-hmm. And the wheel seems all just too fast and uncontrollable to me. So I'm a slow spinner. I'm like one of those slow TV watchers, Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I like the drop spindle. I learned how to do that probably 10, 12 years ago because my mother had Shetland sheep at the time.
Right.
And so we had, fleeces available, and she spins. And so I took a class from her that involved some other community members. And I took a class from her like the other people in the class. So I was one of her students at her farm at the time. And we learned how to process the whole fleece, from the sheep, skirting it, removing the little bits that you don't need to have, the belly wool and the poopy stuff and all that. And then actually how to process it and clean it in the bathtub and wash it and card it and all those things. Mm-hmm. I like spindle spinning.
I know that there's definitely people with strong preferences one way or the other. And then there's the people who just any spinning's wonderful spinning.
They can do it all.
Yeah.
Terry spins.
Yeah. Right? Terry spins. Yeah. She can do it all. She can do it all. So do you still spin very often or?
Not very often. I'm trying to keep up with my channel mostly. And not often. I sometimes enjoy it, but usually I have a project I have to do instead. So
right.
I haven't in quite a while.
So you have a farm now, but you're not raising any fiber animals at the moment, are you?
Right. Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Have you raised your own fiber animals in the past?
Yeah, I had until 4 years ago, I had some Icelandic sheep. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's difficult by yourself because my husband works away from the farm full time. And I didn't have anybody teach me how to shear. I don't know how to shear. And that was kind of an Edward Scissorhands awkward moment. I think they were embarrassed in front of their sheep friends and family. I think they were totally embarrassed. It wasn't good at all.
Was the fleece usable when you were done?
No, well, not so much. No, not really. Kinda. Yeah. Well, here's what happened. The reason we don't have the sheep anymore is because my kids and I really wanted dairy goats. Mm-hmm. And we also have Irish Dexter cattle. So that's a heritage breed of cattle they're about half the size of a commercial regular Angus or Hereford.
Right.
So they're much smaller. And in Wyoming, where we live in the southeast corner of the state, it's very high prairie and it's dry. Mm-hmm. And it's almost high desert. And so 10 acres here is not the same as 10 acres where you live.
Right.
As far as how much grass and how many animals you can have per acre. So with the cattle and then the sheep and the goats also, we really needed to decide, we can't have everything we want to have. So we really need to make a decision. And so we kept the dairy goats because I like cheese. I mean, right? Cheese and butter. And
the best of food. Dairy's the greatest.
It is. So I'm milking goats right now. Yeah. And then we have burgers. So we needed to keep the cheese in the burger.
Have your cheeseburger and maybe put an acre to wheat and have your buns.
So we do not have the sheep now because we just had to make choices. You can't have everything with limited acreage, so.
Yeah. So when you did have Icelandic sheep, why did you opt for that breed?
Because it's Wyoming and it's harsh. And you've seen photos of the winters we have. It's not this similar to Iceland in the fact that we don't have a lot of trees because it's the prairie.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have a lot of trees in Iceland. It's very harsh and it's windy, and it's, they can handle it. The Shetland sheep and the Icelandic sheep can handle the weather here. And they are also, Icelandic sheep are very good for triple purpose. So fiber, meat, and dairy.
Mm-hmm.
You can certainly milk Icelandic sheep.
You just didn't want to deal with that, though. You preferred the goats.
Right. They're so cute. The ones I have, they're little Nigerian dwarf, and the thing is the sheep, I mean, I know not all sheep are like this, but the sheep could care less whether I was there or not. They're kind of standoffish and they're kind of like cats in that way.
Uh-huh.
The goats, they love you back. They want you to, you know what I mean? Now, I know there's sheep people out there that will totally argue with me, and that's true. I think it was just the particular sheep that I had. They could care less. They could care less if I was there or not. My goats love me.
Oh, that's nice.
So there's that. I mean, if you're going to have to do chores every day, you may as well be appreciated for it.
Yeah. So how long have you been farming for? I don't know if I've asked you that before.
Maybe 10, 12 years is all.
And what prompted you to make that decision?
Oh, I've always loved all the gardening and canning and animals. I mean, I've always loved all that homesteader kind of stuff,
Uh-huh.
I've always loved that. Before we had animals already, we had a massive garden, and I did all this canning and just stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, it's important for me because I choose to live in the country in the middle of nowhere. I want to be as self-sufficient as I can and grow as much food for myself as I can. Mm-hmm. So my quest is to have, one of my life goals is to have, this is going to sound really stupid to you city people. One of my life goals is to be able to can enough tomato sauce to make it from October when I made the tomato sauce all through the whole next summer until I pick tomatoes again.
How close are you to your goal? When do you start running?
I've never made it. We eat too much pizza. I've never made it.
You need to diversify a little and get the stretch out.
I don't know, but there's the sauce for lasagna and pizza and I mean all the things, right? Just regular marinara and I make a good sauce. And then I pressure can it, and then we have all the pints lined up on the shelf,
Yeah. How much room does it take up, all your canning in your house when you're done?
Will had to make new shelves last year. I now have space for over 500 jars.
Wow. That's amazing.
But I have over 100 tomato plants.
Uh-huh.
So that's what a friend of mine were talking about that. We were just speculating. When do you go from gardening? When does it become farming? What is that threshold? How many plants does it take? And how many hundreds of quarts from our hallway that goes from the utility room, and then there's a long hallway that goes past a bedroom or two and then to the garage. And that hallway is where we have these shelves, and it's lined with the jars.
Yeah.
And I said to my husband, is the floor up to this? And he's like, I hope so. So yeah.
House collapses under weight of canned tomatoes.
Yeah. All the jars. Can you imagine the mess that would be with all the glass and everything? Oh my gosh. But my husband eats a lot of salsa. Mm-hmm. I mean, I do 30 quarts of salsa just for him, just to keep him happy. And then also the sauce I mentioned, and then regular stewed tomatoes, quarts of regular canned tomatoes just for goulash and chili and that kind of thing, Anyway, so it's important to me to be as self-sufficient as we can. And that's partly why we got the dairy goats, and that's why we have the Dexter cattle. And, we have our own meat that way. I haven't. Uh-huh. And I'm thankful for that. I haven't bought meat at the grocery store in years and years. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. So that takes up a lot of my knitting time.
Yeah. You still have plenty of time to knit, though. I mean, that's your other thing, though, right?
Yes.
I mean, you are a fellow knitting podcaster. When did you get started with that, and why?
I don't have a local yarn store within 70 miles.
Mm-hmm.
And even then, it's kind of a combo store with other crafts and things. And, sometimes they're open, sometimes they're not. Anyway, so I don't really have that community that often, the like that you might have in a regular year, where you could go and sit around a table on a Wednesday night and visit with fellow knitters and share your ideas and your patterns and, that's that community. So I started Purl Together.
And it's a YouTube podcast. This is a visual podcast. You can find it on YouTube as Purl Together.
So Purl Together started, and it didn't really start as a podcast. It started as, let's knit this together. It was more instructional tutorials. So I think the first thing I did was right at 3 years ago. It was in this August of 17. And we did felted clogs. I just started making videos of the stuff that I was knitting for myself anyway.
Uh-huh.
And then, I remember my first couple hundred, subscribers, and I was like, wow, people are really even care about this. So I was just kind of messing about, right? And I started the Facebook group, and we started just talking about like how to knit a beanie, right? And then we did the felted clogs, or maybe it was vice versa. I forget which was first. And then people wanted to know how to knit a sock, and I love socks. So that was one of the very first tutorials as well, was just how to knit a basic, straightforward, cuff down, heel flap and gusset sock.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of how it started. But what I remember the day that I thought, like, we were schooling at home, my kids were doing their work, and I was sitting at my computer answering email or whatever. And then I wanted to just, take an hour and watch my show on Netflix and knit. And I thought, if I could just watch Netflix and knit like all the time, wouldn't that be awesome? Like, how could I create a life where I could just do that?
Where this is my work.
This is my job. That's right. I've knitted through this pattern because it's my work. Air quotes. And how do I create that for myself and even be able to make a little side, a little bit of money on the side doing that. But more important to me at the time, and still, is creating that community, because not everybody does have a local yarn store.
Yeah. And see, I have a local yarn store that's actually very close to me.
Right.
And I tried, and it wasn't a good fit. Like, not every community is a good fit.
Right.
So I found myself in a similar position. Before we went to the Philippines, I actually started the local knit club in my town in Arizona, and it was booming by the time we left, and then didn't have anyone in the Philippines to knit with, and then came back and it didn't work out. So I was like, that's it, I'm taking it online. Sure. So that's also the idea of community. And I think that might be one of the main reasons why podcasters do jump into it, is
right.
Because for some reason, for whatever reason it is, it could be timing or not fitting the dynamic of the local group, or however, they're making their own community.
Right. And I think too, for me, I wanted to create that Ravelry and Facebook group. The Facebook group is way bigger than the Ravelry group. I think that people are just on Facebook. I mean, maybe people that I don't know, but I wanted to create that environment and that community for myself on a daily basis, not just with once a week videos, Yeah. And so I think that's what the Facebook group is about for me, is just creating that community for other people where, there's no judgment. You can come and show us what you're working on and get help whenever you want. I mean, there's hundreds and hundreds of experienced knitters in there with centuries of experience. We may not all do it the same way, but that's why I always say you're the boss of your knitting. You do you, you do how it works for you. Right. I mean, in my opinion, as you know, there are some rules that we follow with knitting. Things that work and things that don't. But there's a lot of room there to be your own boss, make it how you want.
Yeah.
That's why I wanted to create that space of getting help regardless of your experience level. And I think that's some of the problem at a local yarn store is people feel like, well, I am a beginner. I can't go sit with these experienced knitters. Or I'm not a good enough knitter to hang out with. I mean, and that's nonsense, right?
But we all still have that inner middle schooler voice, that likes to poke
Be
at us
self-critical and yeah, that's no fun.
Yeah, it's true.
So mostly I just wanted to watch Netflix and knit and figure out how to make money doing that.
That's valid.
So let me know when you figure that out, okay?
It's true what you say, though, about the Facebook communities and just the communities on social media, because knitters are so generous with their knowledge. It is so rare to run up against a knitter who will say something like, I won't teach you that, or, you have to take a class from me to learn that.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying, like, there are definitely, and I pay for classes all the time. Like, there's definitely situations where it's like, yes, it makes sense to take a class from this person. They have the expertise. They have put the time in. They know how to convey this information, and they will give me everything they need to know that I need to know in order to do this technique or this project. But like, if you are starting and you just forgot how to cast off, or, something looks wonky and you can't figure it out.
Of course. People are super helpful.
Yeah, you're going to have 17 people trying to help you out in the Facebook knitting community.
I mean, one thing I've run up against, this is a business endeavor for me. And so, I am trying to make an income, however slight it is. And like people think that YouTube is a get rich quick thing. And oh my gosh, it is not. I've been doing this 3 years, week in, week out, and it is tedious and it is difficult. And so in my group, for example, I might get a little put out if I know I have a video on a certain technique and people are posting links to all these other YouTubers, I get a little bent because it's my group, right? And I'm like, well, you can at least try to link to stuff that's on my channel, because I'm offering a lot of content and a lot of effort and a lot of time at no cost to you.
Yeah.
So you can at least link to my stuff instead of sending people to all these other channels. So I do get a little bent about that. But by all means, if it's a topic that I haven't covered yet on my channel, or I don't have that technique, a video for that, then yeah, absolutely. Link away.
Mm-hmm.
But you see what I'm saying.
I would firmly put you into the podcaster category now. You're not just instructive.
No, right. Yeah, we try to do interviews and sort of semi-regular podcasts with my podcasting partners. Yeah.
Yeah, but you also still do instructive knit-alongs with your groups. How often do you do those?
When it strikes me that we should.
There you go.
I mean, you're all like scheduled out quarterly, and I have to say mine are not scheduled in that way. Like, we finished the campsite cardigan recently, and for me, it kind of just depends on like when somebody suggests something that sounds fun, and if I have the time to do a larger project like a cardigan. If it's sock knit along, that's only going to be maybe a couple of weeks worth of videos, or even a month. The campsite cardigan, I think I had a full 6 or 7 weeks of videos for that. Mm-hmm. So it kind of just depends on what it is. I don't mind having like back-to-back knit-alongs with maybe just a couple weeks between. It depends what it is. Like, we've done a bunch this year already. The next one, I think, will probably not be till October. But that's only 6 weeks from now.
Do you know what it's going to be yet, or you just have a sense?
Do you want me to tell you or not?
Yeah, let's make this, I thought I knew how exclusive content. Big reveal.
Okay. So last fall, when things were quote unquote normal, I had the first ever Purl Together retreat. It was a live in-person event, and I hosted that in Ogden, Utah. And that was a ton of fun. We had people from all over the country flew in, and we had a full weekend of workshops and, lots of knitting and laughing and eating, and it was a lot of fun. So unfortunately, as we all know, that some of those events have been canceled this year, and mine included. I decided to take my event online. Mm-hmm. And so I'm going to have a virtual retreat, Purl Together online retreat, the first weekend in October. So that's what I'm working on right now, is putting together that so that I can have pre-orders. So October, like we talked about the canning, okay? And the fall is when we're all canning and we're starting to nest and we're, getting ready to settle in for the winter. So we're getting ready to hibernate. So we're going to hibernate together for the weekend. And the first thing I'm going to do is we'll have a knit along that's open to the general public, but the boxes, I'm going to put together boxes that will include the pattern, the yarn, and some recipes and some fun little things from where I live and little surprises. And those boxes will be available with the pattern and the yarn for pre-order as soon as I get the website up. So I'll give you the link for your show notes when that happens, but it's not currently up yet.
Okay.
And I'm going to limit attendance, at least for this first session, to only 25 because we're going to have Zoom knit togethers. And I don't want it to be too big and too crowded. I want people to have an experience where they get to knit with me, but more importantly, they get to knit with each other and have that sense of community, log in for the weekend, get to know each other a little bit. We'll have several, like 2 or 3 sessions where people can hang out for several hours, have help with if they need it with the pattern, although the pattern's pretty straightforward. And then, and just hang out together and talk about the yarn they chose and what they liked about it. Anyway, you get the idea. So that will be the first weekend in October, which I believe is the 2nd or the 3rd. I'm not sure yet if I'm going to do Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or just Saturday, Sunday.
Okay.
So to be arranged, to be announced, whatever. But then, if you choose not to pay for the box, like if you don't want to register for the whole Zoom thing with the yarn and the pattern sent to you, you can knit from stash if you want, and I will have a discount for the pattern. The designer and I have been messaging on Ravelry, and she's fantastic, and so we'll be working on that together.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in the meantime, people should hop into the Purl Together Facebook group so that they can get the updates about that. And then when you have the information, I can update the show notes so that that link's in there so people can learn more about it.
So join the Purl Together Facebook group. You can just search Facebook for Purl Together and then request to join. You do have to answer questions to be able to join so that we know you're not like a troll.
Right.
Like you have to answer the questions. Don't just blow them off because you won't be entered in the group if you don't.
Do you want to share what the pattern is going to be for the knit along at this point, or do you want to hold off?
Okay, I'll share. I have discovered, we did a knit along a couple of years ago by Ambah O'Brien. Her patterns are fantastic. She does lots of shawls and wraps. It's Ambah, Ambah. So I hope I'm saying that right, O'Brien.
I'll link it.
Yeah, we'll put links, of course. But this particular one that I've chosen is called the Lovella. It's Lovella, Lovella. And it's a DK weight, 750 yards. Two skeins are kind of a solid or a tonal, and then a contrasting color.
Mm-hmm.
So I am working with an indie dyer for the yarn that will be included in the registration boxes for the online event, and it's fantastic. It's tightly spun merino, which I love, and the saturation of the color is amazing. I mean, I know this is an audio podcast and not visual, but the two color combinations that we'll have available are fantastic. So watch my Instagram and the Facebook page.
Yeah.
All the Purl Together things, you'll see.
So if people are interested in being part of the Hibernate retreat, you were saying that is that the tickets for that are opening to your patrons first over on Patreon. Yes.
Because patrons, as you well know, support your channel. And so one of the perks for my patrons is that they always get a little bit of a discount, and they always get to know about the stuff like this, like first.
Right.
So they have first right of refusal. Right. So if they, and so I'll open it to my patrons first because it will be limited attendance so that everybody can have the time and the attention that they are paying for.
Right.
But then I'm also open, if there is enough demand, I'm open to doing more sessions in subsequent weeks. If people still want to do that, that's fine. I'll open it up again.
Right.
So awesome.
Okay.
So patreon.com/Purl Together.
Right. And the Facebook group is called Purl Together.
Yep.
And your Instagram is Purl Together.
Yeah, I think it's Purl, PURL _together, I think.
And the YouTube channel is Purl Together.
Yep.
So I hope you all remember this, but if you need to, I'll have links in the show as well.
Yeah, if we didn't repeat that enough times, right? Then you weren't listening.
Thanks for coming on the podcast. I'll make sure all your contact info is in the show notes so people look there, and be sure to check out her instructional videos, which are fantastic and very helpful, but then also her podcasts on YouTube are very entertaining, and she does get different yarny people on there that are very good watches. I really enjoy watching the podcast, Jana.
Thank you.
Thanks for being on.
All right. Thanks for having me. See ya.
Thank you so much to Jana for taking the time to talk to me. We actually talked for another half hour, but Zoom did not like what we had to say apparently because the audio was in and out on the recording, which was very annoying to discover. So if you would like more of Jana than I was able to bring you, be sure to hop over to Purl Together on YouTube and the Purl Together Facebook group. A few more things before I go. The votes are in, and narrowly winning for what our next knit-along will be is a Halloween-themed knit-along. Now, I know some people are not fans of Halloween, so stay with me. You will have ways of being included too. It will start on October 1st and end on October 31st. I will rustle up some prizes, and I'm thinking I will try approaching some designers with Halloween-y patterns to see if they might offer some coupon codes for listeners. I'll have more information about that in the next episode for you, hopefully. If you don't want to knit something to do with Halloween, general fall patterns will count, and anything knit with black, orange, green, or purple. So lots of ways to participate in this knit-along. This will be run in the I Thought I Knew How Facebook group. Post your project photos and finished items there, and look for the prize thread that will go up as October 1st approaches. I will share additional information there as well. And if you took part in the knit-along with Morehouse Farm to knit the Lark Alvina from Shawls, Wraps, and Scarves, don't forget to hop into the Facebook group to find the thread for the giveaway. The prize post has been updated to include 2 hanks of Morehouse Merino lace that was dyed by Erin herself as one of the prizes, so be sure to check that out. The next episode will be the last of the season. I will then be taking 6 to 8 weeks off, but you can still find me on Instagram and Facebook while I'm gone, and the October knit-along will start and run during that time, so make sure you are on the Facebook group for that. So I will be back to talk to you in a few weeks. In the meantime, thank you for listening and knitting with me for a bit. If you'd like to support the show, please visit patreon.com/IThoughtIKnewHow to make a monthly pledge. You may also consider making a purchase from one of our sponsors by visiting the website IThoughtIKnewHow.familypodcasts.com and clicking the link at the top that says Be a Booster. While you're on the site, you can also find the show notes for each episode. Find me on my social media accounts as I Thought I Knew How, except on Twitter, where it's just Thought I Knew How. The groups on Ravelry and Facebook are both called I Thought I Knew How Podcast. Until next time, may you be blessed with stitches that never drop, yarn without joins, and plenty of time to knit.